Hey guys, Matthew, and welcome to episode number 7 of the Casual Exile series. In today's episode, we are actually going to be talking about the importance of valuing cheap items. Now, this is a strategy that I've used myself to make lots of currency over the years because some of these items are actually ridiculous. You can turn a 10C items into a 10 Exalt items or a 1C item into a multiple Exalt item, and it's a very common occurrence. Now, this is actually going to be the first episode of the series where we were talking about an actual method of making currency, so hopefully you guys enjoy it. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Now, as always, this actual text version of the video is going to be in the description, and I highly recommend you actually go ahead and check it out because I'm not going to be able to cover every single thing that I have written in here in this video. Otherwise, it's going to be really, really long. So let's talk about what I did in the video, what I did in the actual document, and then I'm going to give you some examples. But first off, we need to talk about Vaal Orbs. What are Vaal Orbs and what do they do? So, Vaal Orbs are a currency in the game. They're pretty common. They go for about 2 for a chaos, typically. It's about their price. And what they do is that they'll corrupt an item, and it's going to modify it, and you don't know what you're going to get. It can change the implicit, or just add a new implicit, which is typically what we're after. It can change an item completely from, let's say, a unique item to a rare item, or a rare item to a new rare item. Nothing can happen sometimes. Or it could give white sockets to an item. There's a lot of things that can happen. But what we're going to talk about today is especially going to be those implicits. Changing the implicits or adding new implicits. That's what we're going to be after. So what I did in this document essentially is I added the list of the good implicits on each item type. So for example, claws, daggers, wands, and I pretty much went through every single item type in the game. Jewels, amulets, rings, etc., every single one in the game. And I added some additional information and some examples of the power that they can have. Now we're going to go into some of these examples, but again, there's over 1,000 different uniques, and maybe like up to half of them have some decent amount of currency to be made when you are valuing them. So clearly I can't talk about every single one in the video, but what I did is at the very bottom of this list, or at the very bottom of the document, I added a complete list of all of the different unique items that I would consider corrupted. Now, this is based on the meta, and what that means is that the price of these items are going to fluctuate. So if an item in this list is only a chaos or 2 in a league, then go ahead and val it. But if it's an exalt or 2, then you're probably going to be better off selling it unvaled, right? Uncorrupted. So you're going to need to be careful with that, and you're going to need to actually price check your item to see is it worth something before you decide to val it. I wouldn't val something which is, going to give you a significant amount of currency for wherever you are in the game. If for you 10 or 20 chaos is a lot, might as well get those 10 or 20 chaos compared to valuing that item for a potential of multiple exalts, but then instead of getting nothing and losing that 10 or 20 chaos. If it's a 1 chaos item, I would say you should always val them though. Now, remember, there's also the importance of rolls on different uniques. So, not all uniques are created equal. Whenever a unique item drops on the ground, the roll is going to matter and is going to be a big difference in terms of the value of the item. Let me just give you guys a quick example that I showed in another video. If we take these Combs roots here, you'll look that they're worth about a chaos or 2 with no specific life roll. Now, if I pull up the life roll on my price checker to 180, it's about the same price. But if I pull it up to a 200, which is a perfect life roll, you'll see that all of a sudden this 1C item is actually worth upwards of half an exalt, right? It's a lot more interesting to sell it if it's got a really good life roll. Now, this is something that you need to get used to. It's knowing and understanding which stat on a unique item are actually sought after and which ones don't matter. This is going to come mostly with experience, but remember to use your price checker and just mess around with the values on each of your items, and you'll start to get a good idea for it. So that's what I added, a complete list. Now let me show you the potential power of some of these corruptions. Now I'm only going to go through a few examples because I don't want the video to be too long for no reason, but let's get into a few examples. Here we have the Vigil. The Vigil is a 1C jewel, as you can see, 1 to 2C. Now if you were to live search this, you could easily grab them up for a chaos all day long. They will pop up for a chaos. and you could just, pick up anyone that gets listed and then Vaal them. Now, you'll see that if you get this corruption here, which is corrupted blood cannot be inflicted on you, remember that whenever you Vaal an item, it's not the item itself that gets changed, it's the implicit. So it is going to be very important that you look for implicit. If I was to look for corrupted blood like this, it wouldn't show up. It is an implicit, therefore it shows up if I put it under implicit. What's an implicit, you ask? Well, if you look at my gloves, for example, you'll see that there's like this orange-ish line, which is the color of unique items, and there's a couple of them. There's one after the quality of the armor and the energy shield, which is like a separation. Then there's one after the item level of the item, and then comes the implicit. Next comes all of the affixes on the item, which can go upwards of, I think, 10 or so for a unique item. Obviously, normal rare items would only have 6. But the implicit is what's in the middle, and it does say corruption implicit modifier. That's how you know this is implicit. It's going to be important to look at it that way. Otherwise, you're not going to find items that look like yours. So we'll see that we go from a 1 to 2C item to a 3.5 Exalt item. Now, with the current price of Exalts being 100 chaos, that means that if we buy them for a chaos each, the odds of getting corrupted blood, now this odd is going to change depending on which kind of item type you're vowing and whatnot, but I do know for a fact that on jewels it's 1 in 60. So there's a 1 in 60 chance that when you vow a vigil, it gets corrupted blood. If you're buying them for once each, that's 60 chaos, and then we said that Vaal Orbs are about 2 to 1, which is another 30 chaos. A total of 90 chaos. Exalts are right now about 100, meaning you are not even spending an Exalt to get 3.5 back minimum on average. Now, one thing that I do want to talk about is that you are not going to want to look necessarily at just the cheapest. You're going to want to go down a little bit. If you see that the cheapest is significantly cheaper than all the other ones, so in this case, let's say it was 3 Exalts, and then this one was also 3 Exalts, and then it jumped all over to 4 Exalt instantly, there is a possibility that the item is being price fixed. So if you put yours at 3 Exalts and you get PM within 30 seconds, chances are your item is worth more than the 3 Exalts that is being listed. That's called price fixing, and you definitely don't want to fall for that. You're going to be losing currency to people who are essentially trying to steal from you. And directly steal from you anyways. So you're going to want to reprice it based on the price of the other people, which are going to be more clumped with each other. Now, in this situation, we have some 4 Exalt ones, but then it goes to 3.8, 3.6, and then finally 3.5. I would not consider this price fixing whatsoever. That just means that they're probably not selling for 4 Exalt. They're probably more around the 3.5 range, which makes sense because this was listed 24 minutes ago, and this was listed 7 hours ago, and this 21. So you're probably going to be able to sell it for this much, maybe not so much for that much, all right? Something that's important to note. Now let's go into another example. Frozen Trail, 1 Chaos Jewel, 2, 3 Chaos, whatever. If you live search them, again, you're going to give them for 1 Chaos all day, no problem. You valid corrupted blood on it, boom, 5+ Exalts for this jewel. Now, in some cases, this jewel can be even worth more. I've sold some of these for 8 Exalts in the past. They're pretty good, and the reason for that is because they're basically the jewel that cast on crit users will actually use, and they'll need one of them with corrupted blood, which means that they're going to be able to not get corrupted blood anywhere else on their build, which basically means they don't need things like a bleeding flask and whatnot, which is really nice. Next we have a Pyro Ring. Now Pyro Ring is a pretty decent ring, but it's a very common one. You'll see that it's about a chaos or whatever. But you get a bleeding cannot be inflicted on you corruption, all of a sudden it's multiple Exalts. Same kind of thing where you're taking a 1 chaos item, throwing a Vaal Orb at it with the potential for a lot of currency back. Next item, Cool Rain. Cool Rain is going to be the best bow for Toxic Rain Pathfinder, which is why the corruption +1 arrow is worth so much. 1C item, no, not linked, not corrupted, not qualitied, 1C. Corrupted, not linked, not qualitied, +1 arrow, nothing else really, 8 Exalts minimum. These actually sell for that much, and if you were to link them after vowing it, which is going to require 1,500 fusings and 1,500 Vaal Orbs, you can do the math on the price of that, then they'll actually sell for upwards of 40 Exalts, which is pretty insane considering we're talking about a 1C item. Now, I would not go ahead and prior to actually valuing it, 6-link them before, I would actually go ahead and val them, and then I would pay the required fusings and Vaal Orbs. If it's worth it, you can do the math on that by yourself. Another quick example, we have a Cold Iron Point. Cold Iron Point gives us +3 spells. It's a very good dagger for things like Poison BV. You Vaal it, you get damage over time. Remember, Poison BV, damage over time, boom, multiple exalts, 4 exalts. Now, if for you 7 chaos is a good amount of currency, feel free to just sell it for 7 chaos. If you don't want to go through the trouble of waiting to sell it for just a few chaos, throw a Vaal Orb at it, who knows, maybe you'll get a pretty big payout. 4 exalts, and it's even more if it's pre-linked and, you know, it's only 3 links, which is only going to cost you a couple fusings and a handful of jewelers. So not much of an investment to get a 5 exalt payout if you get lucky. Next, we have Embalmer Gloves. Now, these are pretty interesting because they're actually, as you can see, they're not even a chaos. You can literally get these for less than 1 chaos. And if you Vaal one with Despair on hit, well, you've got yourself an exalt right there. So that is a pretty interesting prospect as well. And depending on the rolls on your gloves, it can actually be multiple exalts too. So remember, I have listed all of the good implicits based on each item type. Now, the thing is, I can't just list every single implicit that's good on every single item on case-by-case study because that would take literally forever. For example, the Embalmer Gloves are good with Despair on hit, but with Elemental Weakness on hit, they would be worthless. Meanwhile, my gloves right here with Elemental Weakness are worth 20 or 30 or 40 exalts or something like that. Meanwhile, with Despair on hit, they would be completely worthless. So it's going to be important that you price check these items, not only based on the implicits that I've listed in the document, but also which item it is, because people don't want the exact same implicit on every single item. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is a strategy that I used to make a lot of currency. It's like, honestly, it's a lot more than you might expect, especially if you're picking up a lot of these, you know, trash tier unique. As you're playing the game, they should be on your filter. You're going to see them, you Vaal them, maybe you get something, maybe you don't. In the end, even if you don't get anything, you're really not spending a whole lot of currency per attempt versus what you can actually get out of it. So on that note, I do want to say a huge thank you to my supporters: Johnny, Michael, Cluzy, Zarashi, Luro, Gaikona, Stefan, Croonin, Michael, JW Player, Scott, Richard, Justin, Alex, Ollie, Matt, Kevin, Marcus, Matthias, Hayden, Bitizen, Axel, and Acid. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.